all the points given, all the facts, exports, imports, number crunching, we think that European car production is in a quite bad shape. We don't see much light in the tunnel.
No, it's even worse when we looked at Europe in comparison to the global average. And that's something quite terrible for the foundry industry, which their largest customer is the European automotive industry.
Welcome back to the Gold Casting podcast. Today we are going to do yet another very serious episode about how our market is developing. And to give you a more precise description of Europe is the aim of this episode. Bear with us. In the end, we are going to discuss what this means and what we can see for around the corner for the upcoming years.
Yep, I think the best way to describe Europe is looking at our largest customers. And these are the automotive OEMs. And the best thing to judge how the market is going, look at their sales numbers. As there are now the Q1 and Q2 results out there for most of these companies, so we can get a deep look and deep understanding what happened the first half year and what is expected to happen in the next half year, as they have to present it to their shareholders. And we can get a peek into the strategy of these OEMs, which will trickle down later on into the rest of the foundry world. So, Staffan, should we start with the first one?
Yeah, I think so. Let's go with the first one. Stellantis. Stellantis is difficult for us to judge because they are owning so many brands and they are widespread around the globe. But they serve as an indicator anyhow because they are that big. And what we are reporting here from the first half of 2025 is revenues down 13% if you compare to the previous year. And you can discuss a little bit why this is happening, but baseline minus 30% down is a serious problem for an OEM.
Yeah, especially for an OEM where they usually have one platform and just have different trim pieces for different car brands. So when the revenue is down, it has an impact worldwide. So Stellantis is not the key indicator for Europe anymore, even though many European brands belong to Stellantis. But it gives you a first glimpse into the world that we're more seeing numbers with a negative in front of the number. And minus 13% is quite a lot.
Yeah, and the brands they are owning are, for example, Peugeot, Citroën, Chrysler, Dodge. They are not super luxury cars. I would say they are middle-class cars.
Yep, entry and middle-class cars.
So that was the first one out. Minus 13% down in revenue. Not very good looking. Going to the next one, Renault.
So when we look at Renault, also entry-level cars up to the typical family cars. And for them, the revenue numbers look better. They are up plus 2.5%. So they could increase the revenue. But for us, the more important thing is what's written as the future progression. And this is something that's really concerning. They see a lot of pressure on the retail market, and they are observing a sharp decline in the European market. And back that up that in comparison to December 2024, their inventory in June 2025 is significantly higher, and that's concerning that these entry-level cars are not selling that well anymore.
So there's a parking lot with a lot of Renault somewhere.
Probably more than one parking lot.
Probably more. But still another thing to keep in mind for the result discussion. Here we're talking about predominantly small cars. They seem to be doing quite well.
Yeah, the Renault, Dacia, all that belongs to them.
Yeah, so we save that thought for that section where we go through what kind of cars are we buying in Europe. Good. Then we go to the mother of all, Volkswagen, pride of Germany. And let's dive into it. We can see, first of all, that they sold 4.4 million vehicles, and that was actually up 0.5%, which is good. The sales revenue is also in line here with 158 billion euros. Minus 0.3, I would say, is currency exchange or something else. But the more interesting figure they are presenting is operating result. which goes down with 33%. So 1/3 of the euros are not ending up in the cash bin at Volkswagen. I don't know, but the best way to comment this must be to listen to the CFO, don't you think, Fabian?
Oh yes, he's the one that has the best insight in the numbers. And I want to pick out one quote from him. And he's saying the higher sales in EVs, which are low margin for Volkswagen, causes that deterioration of their profit.
So what he's saying is that it is a very mixed picture even for him. They're selling low margin cars at a higher number. And we're claiming that EVs are taking more and more of the market, and he's actually underlying it, and also the effect for Volkswagen on the profit.
Exactly. And that's something which is quite defining, which we will discuss later on as well, is that he's openly admitting that the EVs Volkswagen makes don't make them any money. And that's something where we have to dig down later on.
I think he's worried, and he's actually expressing his worries in this report. I would like to pick out my favorite line in this quote. That's why we must press ahead with our ongoing programs to improve earnings and pick up the pace where necessary. What does it mean when an OEM say ongoing programs to improve earnings?
Yeah, you can ask yourself, and the most likely answer to that is cost-cutting measures. So if you're waiting for a customer to call you because you want to have new products, you're getting that call now, but not for new products. You're getting that call to give some discounts to your large customer.
And I mean, we see it. I don't know about you, Fabian, but at Comtech, we are actually involved in a couple of projects where cost cut is the key. All of a sudden, and this is very interesting, the number of projects has grown from 1 to 5 in 1 year. That's a growth.
Yep, especially when it's something like that, what we are doing, that it's not just cost cutting, it's also quality improvement, getting a higher OEEs out of their products. And yeah, even small percentages matter. And you can imagine that if you're talking to the standard production, every cost cutting measures that you can do has already been taken, accounted for. So now they're cutting into your margin, if you still have a margin.
They will pass it along. They will share the burden or make a joint effort. There's so many nice management words you can use here. But end of the day, you're absolutely right, Fabian. This is about cost cut, makes things cheaper and more effective in some way.
And jumping ahead from the discussion, one thing that is a real scenario now with the overcapacity is just taking the tools if you don't comply. So the bargaining chip for you is gone. We can do it with a Godfather quote, is basically, I'll make you an offer you can't refuse.
Yeah.
We are now in that territory.
I hope they avoid a horse head. Anyway, so why is this more important than Stellantis? I read somewhere that the Volkswagen and together with suppliers, also tier ones, accounts for 6.8% last year of the BNP of Germany. And if you are 6.8% of the BNP and you start to have a problem, you actually affect the nation pretty much.
Yeah, especially when you calculate that 6, that's just in the direct line. You also have to factor in all these companies that supply the people working there. Something like the grocer or the bakery supplying the workers. And usually the factor is times 3. So you're basically in the 15 to 20% of the whole German economy tanking right now.
Imagine all the hotel nights for people going to meetings with Volkswagen. There must be thousands of thousands of thousands every day.
Yeah, but with these cost-cutting measures, I think it's currently quite nice to own a hotel in Wolfsburg because everybody's come to beg for less. It's probably the same like having a nice hotel currently in Washington, D.C.
But I would like to, before we end this around Volkswagen in specific, Mr. Arno Anschlitz, if you listen to this or some of your colleagues listen, we would love to have you on the podcast and we can discuss this in a serious way in more detail, because we love the way you're expressing this. We think it's very fair, this expression, and we will be honored to have you here.
Let's jump to BMW. We are staying in Germany and have a look at their numbers. For BMW, the situation looks quite good in Europe. They're growing by around 10% with their vehicles, as well as the battery electric vehicle and the ICE engine. So that's a really good sign that you have a premium brand, a strong reputation, and a loyal customer base. And you can force your prices onto the market. So we're quite happy about the European situation. A bit worrying is that they are losing massively in China. And with massively, I mean minus 13.7%. That will be quite a good discussion point about the status of luxury German cars in Far East when we do the China episode. Don't you think?
I think so, absolutely. And yeah, that's a cliffhanger. But also, it's a little bit interesting if one looks at these graphics that battery electric 25.1% in Europe, China 13.2%, US 12.0%. Again, battery electric cars, they are hitting the streets also when it comes to the premium brands. So BMW has done a very good job here with the product portfolio with the battery cars, I would say.
Yeah, I really like their car spectrum for the electrics because they look like just cars. They're not some spaceship traveling around. It's just a car, and that's what you're seeing now in the sales numbers.
But they were pretty early with it. Was it Z8?
It was a hybrid system with I think it was the i8.
Okay, yeah, you're right. But it was a great car. They were early, very early on this. So what are you saying here, Fabian? You're saying that a premium brand with a key performance product seems to be withstanding a lot of things, but not the decrease in China.
That's what I'm saying. And when we jump to the next brand, which is Mercedes-Benz, we see the repetition of that statement because in Europe, they are quite stable. So they're presenting minus 3% of their sales numbers, which is basically in the variation and oscillation of a normal market. But they see a sharp decline as well in China.
Mm-hmm. How big?
Overall in Asia, minus 11%, and specifically in China, minus 14%. Nearly the same number as BMW. So you're seeing the losing status of these luxury brands in China.
So basically every seventh car is not being sold in China.
Yeah.
If you look at the numbers, it seems that they're fairly okay in Europe, but we also see a shift here that old retired people are now planning for retirement, and they're actually buying RVs, right?
Yeah. Yeah, the fun thing is when you look at the Mercedes-Benz vans, which are declared separately, we see a plus 25% in sales volume on the private sector, and at the same time, a minus 28-30% decline for the commercial spectrum of these vans. So you all see all these handymen, plumbers, electricians. They don't buy the new vans because they are seeing also a decline in volume for their businesses.
Yeah, you can question why, but I don't know how it is in Europe, but I know that building industry in Sweden is pretty in a decline. Not that much is actually being built right now. So maybe it has to do with this or a very conscious step from the Daimler group to head on for RVs instead because the margins are too low for the handyman. I don't know. This is just pure speculation.
Definitely. Or the hashtag van life is now the dominating factor from Mercedes-Benz vans. But anyway, the numbers are just at around 10% of what they're selling cars. So it doesn't
I can picture myself having one. I would love to have one. Why not?
Yeah. Go ahead.
You should have the time also.
Yeah.
Yeah, but so the summary is Mercedes-Benz doing a good job when it comes to RVs, a shift over to that sector, we can say, but from low numbers, but also a disaster in China, like BMW.
They're quite a similarity, still strong brands, and more on the Asian market in a separate episode, I think.
Yeah, we have to dig into that. All right, we have come to a little bit of the bird here, Tesla. Why do we bring up Tesla? This is about Europe. Well, first of all, Tesla is doing business in Europe, but first of all, we feel that they are a non-legacy producer with a nice factory in Berlin. So they are important for us in Europe. They are 100% battery electric. So to look at this category, not following Tesla in this, I think we're coming back with this episode in a year, would be a little bit stupid, as we say in Sweden. But then we had the third thing that we think that they are adjusting to the market, and rumors has it that they are working on more and more models that will be very affordable. Making a joke, making a new Volkswagen in Germany, in Berlin. So, yeah, here it is. Tesla will be on the map for us. If you don't like Tesla, then scroll further. I know you are driving a Tesla, Fabian. I'm driving a BMW, so let's share the pain.
So what we're seeing for Tesla, their revenue is quite down, but in comparison for the Q2, it's up again in comparison to the Q1. So when you see last year's quarters, they're up here. Q1 2025 is here, and now Q2 is quite in the middle. So they're growing from their disastrous start of the year, but still they are down. Still, they also said, okay, we are stopping our luxury vehicles. So the Model S and the Model X are no longer available in Europe through Tesla. I think that says something that I want to push the Model 3 and the Model Y more as the standard widespread cars.
Do you know the price tag of these, roughly?
I think the Model Y and Model 3, they're quite similar, start somewhere around 45,000 euros and go up to 60, 80, somewhere in that range.
Still pretty decently affordable, but not very cheap.
Yeah, if you see the base Model Y and get the same level of amenities in a Volkswagen Golf, they're on the same price point, and I think that says a lot.
They're going head to head.
There's a big difference if you're driving a Model Y in terms of room, software, and all of these things in comparison to having a Golf, it was basically my first real own car.
So Tesla going head to head with an ID program, basically. ID3, ID4, I would say. Anyway, so minus 16%. That's okay. They're in a shift. They're shifting models. They had a political crisis. I don't know how widespread this will be, but I think there's one number that is very interesting. Free cash flow, minus 89%.
They are putting the money somewhere that their free cash flow drops drastically. We've seen that they cut out all the interest rates for the financing of their cars. They reduced the pricing for several of their cars to increase the sales volume. And I think that's what you're seeing in that number, that the competition is gearing up. Like we've seen with, for example, BMW, they're now their biggest competitor in Europe for the battery electric vehicles. And they take a large piece of the pie.
Yeah, but now we have explained what's happening with the models. Now we have explained that they're investing heavily in new models. But the problem for Mr. Musk is the gross profit, minus 15%. So here it goes. These two numbers are to be very much separated. What you invest is something that has nothing to do with the gross profit. Gross profit is how many dollars do you actually have over when you have sold a car to a person. Minus 15%. I think this is like for the others a problem. It's not Stellantis. It's not Volkswagen. And here lies the interesting thing. Despite the political things, despite changing the product portfolio pretty drastically, you can see it like this. They're only minus 15%.
They are working quite well with the cost optimization, or they used to have a way bigger margin that they can now reduce it, and still they're not losing money, they're just making less money. That's also important to note.
So all you leftists and others that have been running around and selling stickers or paint spraying Teslas, I don't know. It doesn't. It bites, but it doesn't kill. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So again, I repeat myself, but Tesla, important indicator for all of us. And let's discuss further when we meet at Eurogas or somewhere. Is minus 15% actually world class? I don't know. Maybe it is. We'll see that if we get any numbers from China.
Yeah, especially when we discuss it at Eurogos, we can look back at the whole year 2025 and have a clearer picture.
Yeah, then we take our accounting caps on, and then we sleeve up and dig into the numbers. You're very welcome to discuss these things with us at the Eurogas. So I think we have elaborated around Tesla. Should we go to Volvo Cars?
Yes, I think as a Swedish company, that's something I would leave to you.
So, Volvo Cars from Sweden. My favorite car was an XC60. God, I love that car, but I wore it out. Believe me, you can wear out Volvo. And I was born and raised in a Volvo. First, it was the California White PV544, beautiful car. And then it was the 244, which was more a tank, not a vehicle. Swedish steel all through, and it was said that old love rust. And goddamn, believe me, they rusted. And then the XC60, well, it was top of my career as a car owner. But Volvo car, how are they doing? Well, maybe not that super good, which is a little bit surprising because Volvo has been doing quite well, I would say, following BMW into that segment, and basically healthy numbers, good numbers of sold cars. But now it hit them. So they developed all these 90 series car for the US market, so to build them in the US, and now they have to write off the whole project, which is 1 billion euros. So here it comes. Retail sales down 12%, which is, as I understand it from friends in the business, comes from the decline in the US. They went for EVs in the US, and EV sales in the US is more or less just, dropping. So they had a very bad situation. And the problem is that Europeans still wants to have these cars. They have to import them from the US, which is causing heavily impacts on the gross margin for Volvo. So what happens then? Well, we can dwell in EBITDA, we can dwell in a lot of numbers. We can just say like this, okay, the write-off 1 billion euros, sales is down with 12%, all alarm bells are ringing, and what happens? Well, they fired the CEO. And the interesting thing here is they brought in Håkan, which is the guy leading Volvo in the whole transition into Geely and all that, and he was pretty successful. And in come a new guy, and then it was all a little bit vokey, all batteries, blah, 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 blah. And now it doesn't work because Volvo is big in the US. So believe me, they are chasing for margin, they are chasing for sales, they have to readapt the model program. And the last words here, readapting the model program, that is the problem, actually. If you do a loss of 1 or 2 or 3 billion euros a year, the shareholder can a little bit live with it, as long as they have faith in the product portfolio. You just heard us tell you about Tesla, what they did. You heard us tell about BMW. We do an excellent job with the product portfolio, and even Daimler changing into more RVs. But Volvo seems to be a little bit free-flowing here now. So as a Swedish guy, even if they are owned by Geely, I'm actually worried. And the layoffs now, a couple of weeks ago, 3,000 engineers. And in a country like Sweden, that matters. Believe me. A long rant about Volvo. Do you feel the same, Fabian, or is it just me?
No, it's a terrible business decision to produce battery electric large SUVs in US. So large SUVs to S work really well, but not battery electric. And then in Europe, we want to buy them. But you also see it with Tesla that their Model X, which is also made in North America, is no longer imported into Europe because it's getting too expensive and the sales numbers are quite low. So I haven't got the numbers for the Model X, but for the Model S, which is their luxury sedan, in the first half year, it was 58 of them got newly registered in Germany. And that's not a lot of them. So it's basically, we stopped them as a company. If you still want it, you can go through some importer. So it's a niche product now. And all these tariff discussions, if you want to have it today, you don't know for which price you will get it.
Yeah, that's another problem. It's very nice to know the price tag when you do a business. So let's dig into the next thing, leaving the accounting world and jump into what kind of cars are we actually buying.
That is quite interesting, because when we look at 2024, we have the Dacia Sandero at number 1, then Renault Clio, Volkswagen Golf, Tesla Model Y. And especially when we're looking now, Dacia unchanged. But we already seen with the Renault group that they see a decline. When you look at the numbers, we don't see it yet. So last year they sold around 270,000 of these Dacias. In the first half year, they sold 130,000. So that's basically the half for the half year. That sounds okay. Renault Clio, they even sold more than the half they had last year. And then comes again the Peugeot 208, Volkswagen T-Roc, then the Volkswagen Golf, Volkswagen Tiguan, and Tesla Model Y is no longer on the list in the top 10.
But you can also look, it's a little bit strange with the Dacia because that doesn't have any hybrids or battery alternatives and is still growing. Now, it's actually declining now with 11%, but it's a little bit interesting to see like Citroën C3, Peugeot 2008 and all these. They're -9, +3. I mean, they're fluctuating a little bit around where they are. But you don't see any evidence that people buying small cars will also buy electric cars yet. And I think we have to wait until the price drop of battery electric cars to see the real changeover from, let's say, 20-25% of the cars up to 60.
Yeah, currently what you see, people buying these small cars as a new car because they want to have a reliable transportation. So now you have to build that trust that an EV is reliable, which it is from the maintenance point of view. You're doing great on these things. And when they come in the price range of these cars, we will see that shift over in the next few years.
Here comes a speculation from my side. I mean, in the beginning, battery electric cars were sold with massive taxation benefits. Now we start to have like 15, 20, 25% sales, depending on the models. You start to have a problem with the taxes, the incomes. So, I mean, if we're looking at the declining economy in Europe, governments has to get the money into the box.
But at least there's one advantage to that. You see also still an increase of SUVs. So if the road deteriorate, it's worth spending for an SUV.
Oh, that is so cynical. But you're right.
That's very black humor, but yeah.
But I can give you live evidence of it. I have a lot of customers in India, and they're visiting us, and they say, "Oh, you have so good roads. You can have these kind of cars. You don't need that suspension." You know, we drive a Jeep when we go to some cities because the road is just holes in it. Well, there you go. There's a similarity between India and Skillingaryd in Sweden, anyway. So we're buying small cars. That is what we're saying. I mean, if you look at the top list, the top 10 here, not many big cars. It would be the Volkswagen Tiguan on place 6, I would say.
Yeah. And also what we have to look is that these cars that we're seeing now on the top selling cars, these are not the cars that have the massive amounts of hyper die casting parts. You don't find the nice structural castings in them. You have some beams and brackets, and that's basically everything else is stamped and formed sheet metal.
Yeah, especially Dacia.
Yeah. They cast the engine housing and that's it. And they do it themselves.
Now, interesting though, if you look at this list, you don't see any Chinese manufacturers. So have we been wrong here? You can question that a little bit, but let's jump into Chinese imports. They are growing fast from low numbers. The first half of 2025, Chinese car brand sales in Europe grew by 91% to 347,000 vehicles. So if you divide that from Zeekr, Neo, BYD and some brands, of course, you don't make it to the top 10 list. No. But it's interesting to see that if you combine number 1, 2, 3 here, you actually get up to the number of the Chinese cars that are now sold to Europe. And 91% growth is telling something. They cannot sustain this for ages, I know.
No, but there is the demand there. You don't grow 90% year over year when you're not delivering something that people want. And I think the big hit will be seen coming up in the next 1, 2, 3 years when we see the factories ready built from BYD, from Geely, all these things in Eastern Europe, where you don't have any tax issues anymore, no CBAM issues, just produced in Europe for the European market. And then we should have another look on that list again.
Yeah, just put this in context. They were 2.7% of the market in 2024. Now they are looking at 5.1. So every 20th car is actually a Chinese car. Now, here comes a Staffan rant again. But 3 years ago, Volvo and others declared that, we're going to sell cars over the internet and web pages like Tesla. It was very popular. So what they did was they released a bunch of showrooms and said, we don't need that much of space for our Volvo cars because people are going to buy them from a website. What happened? Well, these firms are very often privately owned into a chain, like a franchise, like McDonald's. What do you do if you have 2,000 square meters to sell cars and your biggest customer is saying, well, we don't need 500, we need 100. They have a lot of people, a lot of floor space. They have a full-blown service shop in the cellar. They put another brand there. So many car makers actually gave away the sales channel directly without any discussion.
Now we've seen it from Mercedes-Benz. They dropped their whole self-owned service shops. So they don't have any sales offices anymore. Just Mercedes-Benz as a group just have, okay, we produce the cars. Our dealer network is now somewhere else. That's not us anymore.
I think this is still, when you buy a car, it's a massive business for any private person. The most people want to actually meet a person when they sign up for 20, 30, 40, 50,000 euros. I would. I don't buy a car on a website. I want to be there, touch it, feel it,
Yeah, but that's what you want, and you can do that in a showroom. And that's what I did with my Tesla. I went to the Zurich showroom, could have a look at the car. I already booked the test drive, so I went there. No strange discussions. They showed me everything, and then got me the card to sit in the car, explained everything, and said, hey, off you go, come back in an hour. Then I could drive the car, experience it, came back, and then I could think about it and order it at home. So one thing that people hate about these car dealers is that you get pushed into something or pressured to buy something. In these showrooms, they can't even sell you something. They can help you buy it online. So they even put up the website, so hey, here can you order it if you don't have a computer at home. But they are basically just for the experience of the car and not to sell you anything. And that takes a lot away from the friction. And if it's in the city center, you can just stop by.
Yeah, but I don't think this is black and white. I think there's a grayscale here, and I think a lot of people are a little bit like me. They want to go there.
That's a generational thing.
No, thank you. Yeah, you're right. So what we're saying here to wrap this up is that there are Europeans are not selling that much cars in China, but China is selling more and more cars in Europe, 345,000 to be more precise for the first half year. And it's growing with 91%. So next year maybe we see some 700. And 700 is that much. Well, that is Volvo. It's not super small. And the second thing is that most of the cars coming from China, I would say the vast majority of them are battery electric.
Yeah, I can't imagine having anything but a battery electric car from China coming to Europe. They tried it for so long to have normal ICE cars sold in Europe. You see these trials when they started in the 90s with Sayong and Landwind and whatever they're called. I think if they sold 5 of them, that was quite much because they're hideous cars.
Yeah, but now they're looking much better. Anyway,
they learned their lesson. Also, you could see it now that they really target key players at the European companies and say, hey, come to China. What you did is great, but do it for us now. And they pick the right people, take them to China and follow their lead. And that's when you get the good cars now. I think the latest acquisition of a Chinese company was that they approached the design boss from BMW.
Yeah, that is a recruitment. Again, very good product portfolio at BMW, and he was probably highly involved in this. So, yeah.
Exactly. But if you're that creative or in that of a role that you can define a vehicle, I think it's quite an easy sell. Stay where you are and you have to fight for every decision. Or go to a company and say, we know what you can do. Please do it. We follow your lead.
Yeah, I was actually drinking coffee the other week with someone, not mention names, from a Chinese design company. And that was exactly the thing, that as long as you develop, as long as you produce and you're effective, everybody's happy in a Chinese company. If you do some mistakes and errors, they kind of filter them out via real tests. Yeah. They're more practical in the way of designing things. So I think we have to look up here.
Yeah, but when we talk about designing things, I think we should go back to Volkswagen and talk about their latest decision in designing. Because at Volkswagen, Wolfsburg was the head of everything. All the strings went together in Volkswagen, and that's about to change. For the first time in their company history, they outsourced their complete platform development, hardware and software for their battery electric vehicles to China. So there won't be any European involvement anymore for the next EV platform that will be 100% Chinese. And I think going that step is saying a lot about what are you actually doing in this company. Is it more like following a process or getting an output? And I think we dig our holes that fast that we are still just following processes and not delivering results. And with the CSP, a China scalable platform, that's the first outcry of that decision. So, hey, if you want to get things done, use the China speed and go to China and don't get any Europeans involved.
But you should also know, to reinforce what you're saying there, Fabian, that of course there's different regions, different salaries in China. But if you look at the electronic engineering and the high experienced designers in mechanics, they are pretty much in the same cost level as we have in Europe. It's not a super big difference anymore, and some of them are actually more expensive than what you can hire here in Sweden.
We've seen it in the last podcast when we did the comparison between the salaries. China surpassed Italy in the median income there.
Yeah, picture that. So, a lot of number crunching, a lot of facts, a lot of brand names up in there. We try to be stringent as we can, but let's do a summary. What do we see in Europe? Well, lower margins per sold car. So probably we will see a lot of efficiency programs or cost-saving programs or cost-cut programs. That is for sure. We also see, number 2 here, increased sales of Chinese cars, jumping up to 5%. Very small numbers, but very fast rate, and would surprise me if they, within a few years, doesn't jump up to like 15, 20. And if you don't believe me, go back to 1976 and look at the Japanese stream of cars that went to Europe in just a few years.
Or other way, go to China and look there on the streets.
Yeah.
You have to look for quite a long time to see European cars there.
Yeah, and they're quite old.
Yeah, they're very expensive or very old.
Yeah. But then I come to the next thing, which I think is worrying. We have said and we have seen that sales in Asia for our European brands is bad, but they're upholding the sales via strong sales in Europe. This is something we have seen. It makes it very sensitive. If you're losing in 2 continents, and the third one is upholding your level of production, what happens if this starts to decline 5-10%? Then you are in deep problems, because there's a lower limit that you shouldn't surpass if to stay in business. And I think it's scarily close to that level.
And especially for all these European OEMs with European labor laws and how are they designed, they cannot have a breathing employment count. The employment count is quite fixed, and that for many, many years, especially in Germany. Volkswagen, if they want to lay off people, it's easier to close down the whole company than to lose the people. And North American or Chinese OEMs, they're way quicker in adapting their workforce to their sales numbers to get more breathing room on the money side, to invest in the next generation or boost sales with campaigns. That's something which will make a difference.
One thing we didn't look at is actually the depth and how much loans different car companies have. I know for a fact that some of the Europeans are under quite heavy burden when it comes to interest rates and their loans.
Yep.
And that is also a problem, because I think to sell cars in 2026 and onwards, leasing, financial solutions for the customer, everything is so important for people, because most people doesn't have the money up front.
Yeah, you see it now also in the statements from many of these European OEMs have the highest amount of debt in comparison to all other companies. And that's something which is quite frightening, especially if interest rates are still climbing, but it's something which will be quite detrimental.
And then my final summary point is more and more EVs. And if someone would told me 5 years ago that every fourth BMW would be electrical, I will go, ha, 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 ha. You know, BMW is about to sound in a car and a motor and all that. But I mean, you see the import from the BYDs and the Chinese brands that are all electrical. And this is growing faster and faster. And that's why also lesser castings.
Exactly. And as a consumer going for an EV, so for me, it was always, I was praying once a year, please don't be that broken when I had to put my Volkswagen Golf into the shop for the yearly maintenance, because you didn't know how much will the bill be. Will it be just the 800 euros, which is the standard service, or you end up with 2,000-3,000 because some timing belt went loose and whatnot. And then they have to dig, we don't know yet, we have to see, we have to move that, and then we remove that, and then we have to change that sensor maybe. So the parts aren't the problem, but the amount of hours to disassemble everything and put it back, and then that's so terrible. And now with the EVs, it's so comfortable. I have something like half an hour every half year for the tire change, and then I also refill my wiper fluid with the winter mix, and maintenance done.
And I'm paying like 1,000 to 1,200 euros yearly on service.
And when I come and take that number, I don't even pay for my electricity that much in a year, what you're paying on maintenance.
Yeah, it's a good guess. I will buy an electrical car next time I have to choose a new car. So how do we conclude all this? Well, all the points given, all the facts, exports, imports, number crunching, we think that European car production is in a quite bad shape. We don't see much light in the tunnel.
No, it's even worse when we looked at Europe in comparison to the global average. And that's something quite terrible for the foundry industry, which their largest customer is the European automotive industry. So I think we should start breaking it down. What are the implications for our foundry industry from the numbers we just presented? And I think the first one is the cars that are still selling well are small cars, which don't have that much castings in them, battery electric vehicles, and the rest. You don't see a big increase. So this attitude, if we just work hard, we get up it again, you will hit a wall with that attitude.
Yeah, we're saying that, okay, if the previous episode we spoke about the number of shots and the decline in a number of shots in the casting machine. But what you are saying is that Europe is extra worse on this because small cars and also that we have an increasing battery car sales. So it's moving pretty fast. But I think we see some accelerators here also. I mean, if you look at how the tier ones have started to behave on the market, I think you heard something about this, Fabian.
Yeah, so if the numbers are down, and we hear it now from several tier ones, that their product portfolio, if they develop something for themselves, they are perfectly designed with their 8-speed gearboxes, then you have an attachment for the electric hybrid motor. Amazing engineering piece, but no cars are sold using that thing. Or not no cars, but very few cars. So you never get off these investment costs. And you see it now with companies, and I like to name two. These are ZF and Brose. They are now in heavy financial trouble, begging the government for money to subsidize their wrong business decisions. And on the backside, which is more impactful for the foundry industry, they go around saying, hey, if you want to have a new business with us, we calculate that you get a 2-3% of cost saving from the price you quoted us. And you have to give us that discount today as a lump sum payment for a production that starts 2027, 2028. So you're squeezing the last money out of your suppliers. And that will be a massive accelerator, killing the smaller foundries. That's something where you really kill the industry right away. And it's not by an external force. That's just within our industry.
Yeah, this is terrifying. And I actually didn't believe it when I heard it the first time. But you're right. And there's one thing being creative with your product, but being creative in your business relationship with an industry already suffering from very low margins over a long time. There is no much strength in many foundries, so they're probably pushing them pretty hard.
No, especially this two-faced. On one side, cozying up to politicians like, oh, we're such a poor company, please give us money. On the other side, being the devil to the smaller entities that are relying on you to give them business and saying, hey, if you want to do it, please pay us some money. And that is like in The Godfather. I'm destroying your business, or you can pay me some money. You choose. No obligation.
It's terrible. But then I think there's another accelerator as well. And that is, as we have seen now, the margin drop for the gross margins on pretty much everybody has to do with price pressure on the vehicle itself, but also to divide all the cost on a number of sold vehicles, evidently. And this will lead to a great push. It will, believe me. I've seen it so many times in different industries over my years, and this will be cost-cut programs. And they have one thing in common: it has to be fast. And there is no fast development in casting. So I wouldn't think that you have any chance to come with a recommendation, open a drawing, take out 50 grams of aluminum and make the saving by that. It would be a pure purchasing push, pressurized saving.
They will directly go to your pocket and take out the last bills you have in there. And also now with the oversupply, you don't have any bargaining chips anymore. They can take out the tool, put it somewhere else to someone who were willing to give them the discount they want.
Yeah. So there are a couple of negative things. We're pretty depressing to listen to again this time, I guess. But again, how to crawl out of this? Be number one in some sense. You can choose different ways to be a number one. You can be the most agile one, to be the pirating and actually be the safe harbor for someone, so you can add the volumes to distribute your costs, fixed cost. I mean, that is pretty good. Technology wise, you can be number one. We have different sports in this. This is a decathlon. I mean, you have leak tight, you have structural castings, you have a lot of things.
Thermal management.
Yeah, but be number one. But then the third one I would say is go for non-automotive. There are quite some projects out there that is growing, not only telecom 5G. I see examples every day, and I think it's quite interesting because the thing is, once you step out of the automotive box, things move faster.
Yeah. And you need a massive attitude change. You cannot come to someone doing non-automotive business and tell them, okay, so we have a 3-year wait time until we can start something. Then you have to pay for that, and that before we do anything. And then you're still 10th rank in our perception because you're just doing 50,000 pieces a year. That's the fastest way to never get into non-automotive.
That's the problem, yes.
And with that automotive attitude, you kill all chances of having non-automotive business. But if you're agile, you start to build a brand online, because what you have to do for an automotive business is you have to market yourself. You have to show the solution you can do, because the companies that are going for these non-automotive solutions, they probably don't know that high-pressure die casting can be a good solution for their application. They never considered that. So you have to make a real rumble online on the digital media, via newsletters, via separated conferences for these applications, and tell them what you can do. And not just tell them once, twice, 3 times, and continue to be in their ears. And that takes effort, that costs money, and the output is not guaranteed. The only thing you can guarantee is how much you put in there. And you have put in quite a lot, and you have to be focused on that. You cannot talk about, hey, we have that many die casting machines. These are from company X and these are company Y, and our spray heads are from company X. And you tell it to someone who doesn't even know what high-pressure die casting is. So everything you say is something like someone coming to us and explaining us some code, how our recording program works. We don't know, we have no clue, and we're not interested in that. And that's how you do it.
Pretty often I find many of these companies, they're very fun to work with, but sometimes they say like, yeah, I think we need aluminum because plastic won't do. And that's where you start, you know. It's like, okay, but we have different alloys. Then you... But they are full throttle ahead. And I start to think about it. You have all the infrastructure around the EVs, for example. They are actually more non-automotive guys. Or the charging stations, they contain pretty much of die casting and so forth, and on it goes. So there are some good chances.
Even though you work with these companies for years, their electric division is probably run by an electric engineer. And you have to tell them what casting can do, because they are focused on the internal things, how the motor has to be, how the battery has to be, and the rest is just, please do something there. We have to house it somewhere, and it should be crash relevant. So make sure that it doesn't crash the battery. And you have to go to them and tell them, hey, when we do it our way, because that's our experience, that's why we're the number one. That's how we do it. That's something that takes time and consistency.
Yeah. And then I would like to highlight another thing. When people like me, 55 or 60 or 65 years old guys, we talk about automotive and we mean cars, right? And for us, born in the 60s and 70s, you grew up, you left school, you had a driver's license, and then you had a car, right? It doesn't look like this anymore. So what we're saying is that in mass transportation, you see more and more diversity. You have cars, obviously, but you have different cars, a battery, electric, and yada, 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 all that. But now, if you look at bicycles, for example, now you have electric bicycles, you have downhill bicycles, you have bicycles for country road running, etc. All of them contain castings, believe me. If you look at four-wheelers, if I might say it, you also see more and more new brands for special vehicles, like self-driving taxis for elderly care in Japan, for example. I mean, who knew about Zooks 5 years ago? And now they're actually developing very fast. And they all need castings. So maybe one has to think about, okay, what can I produce? Am I super good, number one, in leak-tight castings? Then find people who needs leak-tight castings, but don't stare on car model, platform name, blah, 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 blah. Because your solution, your skill could be number one, and an excellent customer service to someone who, exactly as Fabian is describing, says that, I need something in aluminum because I have a hole here with a bolt. I need a thread.
Also, when we talk about leak tight, there is now, especially in Europe, a massive changeover. The current climate gases are no longer permitted for new platforms from 2027 onwards. CO2 is the best solution to go for. It has 3 times the efficiency of the R134A, which we're currently using. But you need to have 180 bar of helium tightness. So high-pressure die casting doesn't cut it. What we're doing with Rio casting, that works perfectly well without any impregnation. And that's an easy way to become number one quite quickly. But you have to put the effort in now. And when you talk about the climate system for a car, what about heat pumps that are used for houses? People kick out their gas furnaces, oil burners quite a lot when they do remodeling their houses. Why not go there as well? Talk to these companies, hey, we can do them in a casting. That easier, you can attach more, and why don't we look into that? Yes, it's an effort. There is no heat pump design suggestion portal where you can just upload it or download the newest part. No, that takes your effort, and nobody can guarantee that what comes out of it. But at least in my opinion, it's better to go down fighting than just waiting for someone to tell you, okay, now you're insolvent.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're good in carbon dioxide for cars, why shouldn't you address the other carbon dioxide compressor market? I mean, you have all these containers with groceries and food and airplanes, whatever. I mean, everybody's going this direction, not only the cars. Trucks, absolutely. They have quite interesting heat pumps, actually. They're pretty big. Believe me. If you have a battery of 4.2 tons, then you need some thermal management.
Absolutely. So that's just one opening, and this time you have the regulation on your side.
Yeah, again, read regulations, read export statistics, read about new legislation around the corner, because these things are important. They're affecting our business much, much more than we believe.
Because there's no way around it. You have to follow these regulations. They come into place at a certain date, and then from then on, everything that is coming new, and there will be new platforms, will come with these regulations in mind. So quite stupid not to read them.
Yeah. So, dear listener, now we have gone through a lot of accounting, a lot of number crunching, It's looking pretty dark in Europe if you compare it to other regions, I would say. And sorry if we have bored you and made you depressed or something, but I mean, come on now. It's better to know than not knowing, and then you can act. And I hope you act with a number of things. But first of all, please subscribe to our channel, because you're important for us, and we want to see how many followers we actually have out there to streamline and give the best service we can do.
Because when we look at our statistics, around 90% of the people watching our videos on YouTube are not subscribed.
Yeah, but on the other hand, the interesting thing is that the ones that we know and can identify, they are more or less, half of them are decision makers. So yeah, there's plus and minus with everything. Anyway, thank you for listening. Please listen in to the next episode. I don't know when, but we will try to make one about Asian market upcoming.
Don't miss that episode. And then end a commercial break from my side. If you really want to start now becoming the number one in something and market that, hit me up, let me know, and I can show you how to do that business development from positioning through the marketing into your sales cycle. Let's discuss.
That's your best investment. Call Fabian. See you. Sayonara. Bye.
Bye.